We're going to start our next session. It's on clergy legislation overview. And our speakers, it is about the significant pension plan change for clergy, along with an update from the study on ministry. And it will be among several items directly affecting clergy at General Conference. And our speakers will be Bill Kavanaugh, who is the Chief Operating Officer at Wespath Benefits and Investments, and the Reverend Dr. Tom Rand, who is a member on the Study of Ministry Commission and lead pastor of Sylvania, Ohio First United Methodist Church. Thank you.
Good afternoon, my friends. It is certainly a pleasure to be with you. We have heard so much today about so much good ministry going on in the church and so much hope for the future, despite any uncertainty we may find ourselves in. And it is certainly our pleasure at Wespath to care for all of those that serve the United Methodist Church and ensure that they have an adequate and productive retirement. And it is with that I come before you today to discuss changes to the clergy retirement plan that is being proposed to the 2020 General Conference. While this new retirement plan, which we call Compass, will be new in many respects, it is built on many of the long-standing values of the pension plans of the past and that have been our guide since 1908, predominantly to provide lifetime income for clergy and to ensure an adequate retirement for all, particularly those that are lower paid in ministry. We've also tried to think about some emerging needs in the development of this new plan. I know many of you are very aware that it is not unusual to graduate from seminary with $70,000 or more in debt. And we have, and I will talk about it a little later, worked to try to provide provision to help those burdened with that debt as we build this plan. And we have also tried to recognize that our church is changing. Despite some of those incredible growth numbers we heard earlier in some of the ethnic ministries, there is an overall decline in U.S. membership in which this plan supports, and the denominational uncertainty does ask us to consider what we can do to make the plan more sustainable as we go forward. So before we get to that, just a quick reminder of the current plan, CRSP, or the Clergy Retirement Security Plan. It's a hybrid-based plan, which means it provides a defined benefit or pension and also an account-based or defined contribution benefit. This new plan, Compass, will be exclusively a defined contribution or account-based plan. I want to stress that active clergy that have earned credit in the legacy plans, which could be pre-82, MPP, or CRSP, will keep all of those benefits. Compass would only be from its effective date going forward. Compass will also have no impact on retired clergy. Their benefits are unaffected by this change. And all of the flexibility annual conferences in the United States have today in terms of who is eligible for this plan will remain under the Compass plan as well. So as we worked with a number of stakeholders, our board of directors, conference benefit officers, our Young Leaders Advisory Board, and many others, we worked to build some objectives on which we would design Compass. The first was sustainability. You heard our Chief Legal and Governance Officer, Andy Hendren, yesterday talk about the long tail of our benefits. If nobody entered the plan beyond today, the current benefits would be paid out until roughly the year 2100. We closed a plan in December of 1981, creatively called Pre-82, of which, so next year would be 40 years since it's been closed, and there are still clergy in active ministry with credit in that plan. Pre-82 will be paying benefits for 40 or even 50 more years. These plans have a very long tail, and it is important in a changing church that we ensure that the future of these plans are sustainable so they can provide the very important benefits that they are designed to provide. It's also important that a plan is affordable, not only to the plan sponsor, meaning the annual conference, but to the participants. Retirement is a very important part of financial well-being, but it's certainly not the only part. So it is important that the plan is affordable. Adequacy was also a very important objective. We want to make sure that the retirement benefit that it provides is adequate for all of those that receive it so that they can retire with dignity. And then lastly, flexibility, to ensure that those that receive these benefits can use them in the best way they see fit. So Compass will predominantly have 3 parts. The first part is a benefit that is equal to all participants. It is the equivalent of $140 a month. That number would be indexed for inflation over time. There will also be a benefit, non-contributory, meaning everybody will receive it, equivalent to 3% of their pay. And then the third piece, lastly, is a match. For every $1 a member of clergy puts into Compass, the plan will match that dollar up to 4%. Put in 4%, receive an extra 4%. And as you can see at the top of this slide, Compass is proposed, upon approval of General Conference, to take effect on the 1st of January 2023. This slide will give you a very quick breakdown of 2 examples, a member of the clergy making $40,000 a year and one making $75,000 a year. You'll see that that flat dollar, or $140 a month that I talked about, is the same in both cases. It is received equally by everyone. The next line represents that 3% of compensation also received by everyone. The 4% match is contributed upon a 4% contribution of the participant. So it shows you there in total dollars. The person making $75,000 a year in this case receives slightly more in terms of dollars, but you'll notice as a percentage of compensation, it's actually higher for those that are lower paid. There's a couple of other features I'd like to take a moment to explain. I mentioned earlier that we wanted to do something to help those that graduate from seminary with debt. So upon achieving provisional status, whether that be as a deacon or elder, Compass will have a 2% or a $2 for $1 match for the first 10 years of a participant's membership in the plan. Where I said earlier it would be dollar for the first 4%, this makes it a $2 match per dollar of contribution for the first 10 years of participation, tied again to provisional membership, either as a deacon or an elder. Compass will also include 2 automatic features. One is called automatic enrollment. The other one is called automatic escalation, to encourage participation and increasing participation in Compass to help prepare all clergy for retirement. And then lastly, a payout system to help distribute the benefits of Compass in a monthly stream of payments to provide income over the retirement years that a member, a retiree lives, with the added flexibility, to the extent that there are benefits remaining, the ability to pass those on to a beneficiary of clergy's choice. So, in quick summary, this is a shift from a hybrid plan that has both a defined benefit and defined contribution or account-based plan to a solely account-based plan for sustainability. As CRSP, Compass seeks to provide lifetime income to participants to ensure that they have the adequate retirement that they seek, and it provides that as a percentage higher for lower paid clergy than higher paid, lower paid clergy than higher paid. It also tries to balance the needs between annual conferences as plan sponsors and the retirement benefit needs of our clergy to ensure the plan can sustain over time. I would encourage you, if you have an opportunity, to take a look at the Wespath website, where this petition and all 26 submitted by Wespath to General Conference 2020 are available for your review. We also have a great deal of material just outside the door at the booth. And if we have not yet had the opportunity to present to your annual conference delegation in more detail, please see myself or any of the other Wespath representatives here, and we will be happy to come visit with your delegation and go through this and other petitions in more detail. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tom Rand, and I'm a General Conference delegate from West Ohio, here representing the 2017 to 2020 Ministry Study Commission, chaired by Bishop Lori Haller of Iowa. In the last 2 days, we've heard a lot of reports about plans and proposals and protocols. Oh my! It's almost as bad as lions and tigers and bears, but perhaps not quite as anxiety-producing. Yet in every crisis, there is an opportunity to rethink the way things are and to imagine a new future together. Today, I want to share with you why I'm excited to be a United Methodist and why I can see through this crisis, in this present moment, a bright future for the United Methodist Church around the world. Imagine with me a revitalized Methodist movement in which lay people take their faith with them into the workplace, into the marketplace, wherever they go, gathering people and helping them to live their real, everyday lives with Jesus. Imagine churches no longer competing for members, but collaborating to magnify kingdom-based ministries, giving a tangible and experiential meaning to being a connectional church, something that has local impact. Imagine clergy peers gathered for mutual encouragement and formation, some of them grounded locally, others are itinerant, but all of them are invested in one another's well-being and in helping their community thrive. Imagine local pastors finally becoming ordained, and deacons serving outside the local church, freely celebrating a sacramental life in their contextual ministries. This year, the Ministry Study Commission would like to offer the church a gift. It is a theological offering and an invitation to a conversation as a church that could completely transform the way in which we do ministry by learning from our roots how best to grow into our future. Our offering is a theological framework for ordained ministry entitled A Sacred Trust. It is brought to you for study, discernment, and prayer as we rethink our structures of ministry to make them more flexible and adaptable, more innovative and nimble, while becoming even more fully grounded in our Wesleyan theological heritage than is our present practice. At our roots, Methodism was a lay-led movement. Who are we kidding? At our deep roots, The apostolic tradition itself was lay-led. Over time, we have become more and more clergy-centered and more clergy-dependent to the point that we cannot even conceive a church that does not have a clergy person. And the weight of sustaining all those clergy is becoming increasingly heavy to bear. Even when we go to start a new church, the first question we always seem to ask is about viability, right? By which we mean, when will it be able to pay a pastor? When did the ability to pay a pastor become a standard for what it means to be a church? Can we learn from our history how to release lay people to inhabit their own incarnational ministries that are connected and related to a sending church? Why, that sounds positively Wesleyan. As a ministry study commission, we looked at what kinds of pastoral leaders we need in order to release the laity into their kingdom potential, and we looked at some of the best ways the church can support and nurture those kinds of leaders who are able to serve with flexibility and innovation while maintaining the deep and abiding connection with our apostolic and Wesleyan roots. The study document we are offering the church is designed to guide our theological conversations and reflections about the nature of ordained ministry in relation to the church. Here's just a taste, the definition of ordination that we're using. I invite you to read it along with me. Ordination is a visible and outward sign of the sacred trust of clergy leadership. It is a gift of God, given to Christ's church through the power of the Holy Spirit. Ordination is a holy act of the church universal that empowers clergy who manifest an inward and spiritual grace to represent the divine initiative at work in the community through the life of apostolic ministry. As a sacramental offering, rooted in our common baptism and one table, ordination bears witness to the mission of God at work in the world. We are proposing something rather bold. We are asking the church to have a conversation about our theology of ordination before we start changing our book of discipline. It's radical, I know, right? We're asking us to think before we act. Over the years, for all kinds of good reasons, the church has seen issues and reacted to them in one way or another. We United Methodists pride ourselves on being practical theologians, after all. The result of these incremental adaptations over time is a polity that lacks theological consistency. So rather than try to change the discipline at this point when we have a whole lot of other stuff to figure out, right? We're asking the church to have a broad conversation about the nature of ordination and together to develop pathways for ordering ministry that are reflective of this conversation, including the current and anticipated needs of the church for clergy leadership moving forward. Our commission also did some other things. With representation from central conferences in Africa and the Philippines and Europe, we made recommendations of the ways our current orders of ministry could be adaptable in the global context in relation to the Standing Committee on Central Conference Matters. We examined the processes for clergy formation, we examined funding sources and patterns for theological education, and explored student debt by seminarians as a way to reduce debt. All of these questions are important, and you can find information about them as part of the larger report of the Ministry Study Commission, which will be available in all of the General Conference written languages of English, French, Kiswahili, and Portuguese, as well as Spanish and Korean. Ultimately, these, among many other questions, such as how to address security of appointment, what conference membership means, and the sustainability of the appointive system can be addressed and rethought if we take seriously this opportunity to restructure our orders of ministry to align them more fully with our theology of ordination. Let me be clear. A sacred trust is a theological document that intends to raise questions for us to consider. It concludes not with any structural proposal, but with the series of open questions that may serve as a starting point for reflective conversation. A sacred trust is intended to give us a theological framework, an orientation around the things we hold in common that will shape our very practical conversations about how best to order the church's ministries to address our current missional contexts. We heard over and over again yesterday a desire to restructure the church to address our 21st century missional contexts, plural, across the globe. Transforming our system of clergy leadership requires serious theological reflection before we act. And I believe our theological conversation will generate excitement and creativity across the connection as we imagine new systems for discerning and nurturing call, for clergy and lay formation for ministry, and for deploying clergy and laity as partners in shared ministry settings, all within a more sustainable, connectional system. The full Ministry Study Commission report, including a sacred trust, will come before the Ordained Ministry Committee for consideration. It can be found on page 1003 of your ADCA, with a sacred trust beginning on page 1005. Our major request and recommendation is that the General Conference authorize a follow-up ministry study commission to guide the denominational conversation about a sacred trust and to help craft the kinds of transformational changes that will allow the church to live into a vibrant and more beautiful future. We all know about the decline of 20th century models of church. What we have been doing is simply unsustainable. It is time to rethink our thinking and to lay the foundation for a revival of the Methodist movement in whatever expressions emerge to address our 21st century global missional contexts. I believe that in our history and in our theology, we have exactly what the world needs for such a time as this. And I'm excited to be a United Methodist. And because of this work, I'm very excited about the future of United Methodism. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to enter a time of questions. And before that, I do have to apologize about one housekeeping thing. Before you leave, please fill out an evaluation on your Sched app, or you can find paper copies at the back there in the box. But please do fill out an evaluation before you leave. I do want to remind you, as you're coming up for the microphone, to please identify yourself when you ask a question, and please be sure to keep it to a minute, and I will keep you to a minute. So, thank you.
My name is Dan Schwerin, pronouns he, his. I'm from the Wisconsin Conference. I have a question for the pension, and my question is this. I was grateful for the anticipation that you could incentivize help for those facing seminary debt and try to give a boost. And you mentioned deacons and elders. In rare circumstances, local pastors receive a seminary training and simply choose to remain local pastors. Does the same incentivization work for local pastors or only for those other orders?
Well, thank you very much for that question. And as the benefit is currently designed, it is specific to those in provisional status as a deacon or an elder. I would also like to add that it is not necessarily a requirement that those provisional members have debt. It will not be the type of benefit where we're asking for proof or we're checking statements. It is simply a recognition that those new to ministry are typically lower on the pay scale, sometimes minimum pay appointments, just starting in their ministry and don't have the financial capacity maybe to meet that full 4% match. So while it is at this point designed solely for provisional deacons and elders, that is the spirit in which it was put together.
Okay, our next question, please.
Sandy Olwine, CalPAC Clergy Delegate. Excuse me, I've got a cold, so my voice is a little bit low. This is for Tom. Looking at the ordained ministry, have you spent time looking at the orders that we do now have between deacon and elder? Are there questions that direct whether or not that's something we're going to keep? And if we are keeping dual orders, is there anything to prompt us to talk about how it is that often deacons are second-class citizens in our clergy? As an elder, I know there's ways in which deacons do not have a fair shake in many times. So I'm just curious what you've provided around that.
Thank you very much, Sandy. So we had a lot of conversation about elders and deacons, and we do recommend keeping the orders, although we have a foundation for a different way of thinking about them, and a way of thinking about them in a common shared ministry. For instance, one of the things that we stress as part of the report is that service isn't a function of ministry the way we currently define it with both elders and deacons, but service is a posture of ministry that all clergy and all laity undertake as part of our ministries. And so there is a foundation in the theological document to be seen and to be understood as different. They have a different call and a different focus in ministry, but they are equal in terms of the orders. And so how then that gets translated into legislation is the work of the next quadrennium. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
Lonnie Brooks, Lay, Alaska, also a ministry study question. The United Methodist Church is a signatory to the World Council of Churches document, Baptism, Eucharist, and Ministry,
Yes, sir.
which clearly defines a threefold order of ministry, elder and deacon being separate, and deacons in that document are not provided with sacramental authority. Are we, in fact, proposing to abrogate our signature on that document, or is there some wiggle room that you find there that we can now say, actually, deacons do have sacramental authority?
Thank you, Lonnie. I really appreciate that conversation. That was a long conversation that took us 4 years to work our way through, and our understanding is that sacramental authority goes with ordination, and it is a sacramental work in and of itself, and so that is the basis on which we give that justification. We do refer to the World Council of Churches document extensively, and that is definitely a part of our work, and it is an important part of our conversation with our ecumenical partners around the globe in terms of how we understand that and how we understand some things similarly and how we understand some things differently. For instance, in baptism, Eucharist, and ministry, bishops are a separate order. In the United Methodist Church, they are not. And so we have different understandings than our ecumenical partners, but we still work together on that basis. Thank you.
I think this will be our last question. Go ahead.
Hi, Meg Glossier, staff at the General Board of Higher Education and Ministry, and this is a question for Wespath. I want some clarity. I heard you say this is for the 2-to-1 match for provisional members. You tied it to provisional membership, but you also said that match would last for 10 years. So if provisional members make it to full membership before 10 years, do they still get that match into the first 10 years of ministry, or does it stop at the end of provisional membership?
Thank you for the question and the opportunity to be more clear about it. The provisional membership is simply the trigger by which the 2-for-1 match will begin. Once that starts, it will go for 10 years. So whether they stay in provisional membership or they move to full status, that 10-year clock starts and will not stop until the full 10-year period has been, they have benefited from the full 10-year period. Thank you.